Welcome to Ladies Who Launch, not your average business podcast. Dropping every other Wednesday, Alyssa and Dakota are two successful and opinionated marketing entrepreneurs engaging in insightful conversations with industry thought leaders, as well as casual conversations surrounding our lives as entrepreneurs.
Welcome back to the 100th episode of Ladies Who Launch. We can't believe it, you guys. This is our 100th episode. And it's falling on a really fantastic day because also happens to be Alyssa Berry's birthday today. Happy birthday, baby. And happy birthday to the podcast.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, I don't think we've ever recorded on any one of our birthdays before. So yeah, that's pretty funny that lands on today. But yes, thank you. It is the birthday day.
Stay tuned for your embarrassing Instagram post that I'm going to do later.
Oh,
it won't be embarrassing. It'll be beautiful.
I know we're a whole thing. But I know, but it's 100 episodes. And I don't think 4 years ago, Dakota and I had a blink of an eye that this would get to this point, but it's crazy to look back. I mean, I think on one of our last episodes when we were kind of reintroducing ourselves in the podcast, I think we said it's been 2 years, but it's been 4 because we started our first episode dropped April of 2020. And so this was a COVID project.
Yeah.
And I think through COVID, we've just all lost track of all time, but it's crazy that it's been 4 years, 2 episodes a month.
Yeah.
100 episodes. It's crazy.
That's a lot of content.
I know.
And I'm really proud of it all.
Yeah.
Really proud of it all.
We were both looking back. We're going through like our shows because we're going to kind of do a bit of a retrospective on some of our episodes and kind of give you behind the scenes of what happened in different episodes. But it's, when you see it all sort of in a big list of the guests that we've had, the topics we've talked about, the sort of vulnerability that we've shown over these 4 years, it's incredible the amount of content that we have put out in 4 years. And I think it's funny, Dakota and I always sit and sort of chastise ourselves about, oh, we're not as active on social as we should be. And we need to be doing this. We need to be doing this. But when you look at the volume of content that we have put into the ether over 4 years, it's crazy.
It's impressive. Yeah.
I think we need to give ourselves a whole lot more grace than we do normally because it's...
Yes.
Yeah, I think on the day-to-day, it's hard to see. I think we sort of view it as like, oh, we need to be doing this. We need to be doing this. And there's lots of things we want to do with the cast, as we've always mentioned. But when you look back on all of it, and it's like, oh my God, that's an insane amount of work over the past 4 years. And just first off, we could not be here without Alex, our producer. Dakota introducing us to Alex of Astronomic Audio back in the COVID
2020.
Back in 2020. And Alex, I talked to Alex last week, and his business is grown exponentially. I think we were probably his first clients back in the day, or within his first group of clients. Yeah. And now he's vastly outgrown our little podcast. And that is so amazing to see how his business has just been moon to the stars in 4 years. It's incredible.
Well, and I have to commend Alex because I think all of us are in this place where we're no longer going to but we're all looking to streamline and be more efficient in our businesses. And Alex has kind of there's been times where I've had to say to clients, okay, we can't use this particular software anymore because it just doesn't work for us, right? It just makes our lives so much harder. Or, oh, your Instagram account isn't connected to your Facebook account. We've tried for 10 hours to fix it for you. Go fix it because now we can't do our job. So I have to commend Alex because he recently had a bit of a chat with us about some really cool new apps that just do things better in terms of remote recording and things like that. And so I'm excited to level up our game in terms of the different platforms that we're recording on, how we're doing our social promotion. And it's all because of Alex. So thank you, Alex, for supporting us and always pushing us to be better. We appreciate you because he's going to be recording. He's going to be editing this.
Yeah, I know. The fact that Alex still personally edits these podcasts, I'm not sure if that says anything good about us, but
that's like me when we still personally sometimes manage Instagram accounts that aren't connected properly, just out of the kindness of our hearts for our clients. Anyway. So that brings me to kind of the intro of our podcast today. So we're going to be doing a bit of a retrospective on Ladies Who Launch. And I was just going to say, it's so funny. I think about my business in this same respect, in that sometimes I am just moving through the motions, trying to get through the week. But lately, I've been really reflecting on how much I've done and how much I've learned and where it's really gotten me. And I feel the same way about the podcast, in that we started this, kind of off the side of our desks, just like we did our businesses in some ways. And you look back for my business 8 years later, and then the podcast 4, and for Alyssa, her business is like 9 or 10 years old now. And you're just like caught off guard with, holy crap, like I really am amazing. And like, I've done a lot of stuff, and it reminds you that you really need to celebrate this stuff. And I think for what I would say is, Alyssa and I don't celebrate ourselves enough with all that we've done for Ladies Who Launch. So that's something that we're going to be better about this year, is just celebrating the successes of Ladies Who Launch and taking what we've already got and making it better. So it's an exciting time. And of course, we wouldn't be here without you guys either. So thank you for listening and tuning in, giving us ratings and subscribing. We adore you. And as always, if you can spread the word, we do provide this content completely for free. We are going to continue for the foreseeable future to provide it for free. And we are your go-to ladies for business stuff. So if you're a female entrepreneur or a business owner, or just a female in general who's doing everything under the sun to support everybody else, this is the podcast for you. And we would, as always, love your rating and your subscription to help us grow.
Yeah, it's funny. Those podcast ratings from Apple, it's funny. You don't think much of them, but Apple's algorithm keeps track of all that stuff. And then that's how you get pushed into the other. It's amazing how much there's so much data tech behind podcasts now, that especially on Apple, because Apple is by far the largest podcast app listener. The majority of people listen to their podcasts on Apple. There's no doubt. Spotify is second, but the majority of people listen to their podcasts on Apple's podcast app. Whether you have an Apple or an Android, you can have the Apple podcast app. And while we sort of lament the fact that there's not a lot of demographic data attached to podcasts in terms of analytics, the tech and the back end of Apple Podcasts and what it pushes, and where you can sort of insert your podcast into the vast podcast world on Apple, is pretty impressive. And there's a lot of small podcasts that you'll see sometimes in New and Noteworthy, or in top episodes, things like that, that get pushed to the top or pushed to the front because of their very voracious audience that is continually ranking them and all of that. So that's just our comment to our very rabid fan base, who either texts us, emails us, or DMs us after episodes and tells us they loved it, gives us guest ideas or any of that kind of stuff. That, like, we love that. But yeah, put that down in Apple.
Yes.
Put your thoughts there, because they do look at, meaning AI, looks at all of that stuff.
The boss look.
Yes. But as I'm sitting here talking about data, I'm kind of the one that maintains and looks at our analytics on a regular basis. I sort of geek out into that. And we use Simplecast as our podcast hosting and analytics software. So if anybody is doing podcasts, you probably are familiar with Simplecast. But it shows us like where our top listeners are from, and also our top episodes. And obviously our listenership skews very heavily to Canada, but in our top 10 countries of listeners, we have Singapore and South Africa and Japan and Portugal and France and Germany and Spain and the UK and the United States. So thank you to everyone around the world who tunes into our little podcast, because it's crazy to think that Dakota and I are being listened to in a town in Portugal right now. I mean, that's just epically cool.
I think I know who that is. My friend Nikki, she lives in Portugal.
Do you know anyone in Singapore? Because that one kind of threw me. I was like,
no,
I don't know anyone in Singapore.
That's so cool.
But yeah, it's crazy how your little project can reach the world and that people continually tune in because for whatever reason, like find something that connects with them. And that's all that we want to have happen here is that. But as we said, we're going to talk a little bit about some of our 100 episodes, some of the ones that jump out to us, some of the ones that we remember, and any of the ones that sort of maybe we could go back into the archives and say like, oh, right, remember when we were doing that and what was going on behind the scenes? I mean, there's a lot of those stories. But it's funny, all of our top 10 episodes are currently our very first episode, episode 1, is our third most listened to episode. That's the COVID-19 got you down. And I think that was like an entire sob fest about COVID and the complete and utter destruction. Because yeah, it was April 2020 when this all started, and that we were stuck at home, and no one knew what was going to happen to our businesses back then. And so, yeah, I think that first episode, I'm pretty sure there's crying. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't even know. I haven't listened to that one in a while, but there's definitely been crying on the podcast many times.
I think that's actually something I'm going to tell Dakota. If Dakota wanted a social series, we should just go and pull all of our crying snippets and create an entire reel of us just crying on this podcast.
That's actually a very sad but hilarious way to do a reel.
Hilarious.
But yeah, like I don't know, Alyssa, how do you want to kick this off?
Well, let's just go back. Okay, so we have our old episodes open in terms of where like our Google Drive of where our episodes all exist. So in scrolling through, just in a quick snapshot, pick an episode and tell me what you remember about it.
I think the mark of any good podcast and social media is your ability to translate lived experience into filling a gap for someone. And something that we consistently talk about on the podcast is relationships, community, and the idea of breakups not being failures, but opportunities, and things like that. So I would say from the early days, one of the ones that I really loved was episode 6, June 10th, 2020, relationship shit shows. That one, I not only discussed a lived experience I was having, but we also talked, it really translated into business. So, good clients versus clients who take advantage, clients who have budget versus clients who don't, when to say no, when to cut ties, all those kinds of things. So I really enjoyed taping that episode because it actually helped to kind of heal some stuff that was going on for me, but also I thought it was really good advice.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, yeah, I remember that episode too. And I like our relationship episodes, not just because of our personal relationships that we talk about, but connecting our personal relationships to our business. And I think we do that very well in how we relate our personal and creating our personal brands and relationships back to our businesses. And I think that's partly why people relate, is because most people who are running small businesses or solopreneurs or whatever are like, your business is your life, to that extent. And so you can't really disconnect your personal life and your business life in that way. And I think that's a positive,
Yes,
a positive
absolutely.
component. I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Well, okay. Maybe I'm going to pick one from the beginning,
Okay.
one from the middle, and one from recent. So I would say the other one that I really loved taping in the middle was the how much rest are you actually getting? So the whole sort of idea of like, I'm constantly fucking exhausted, but why? And can it be helped? So we kind of reviewed and got inspired by the different sort of ways that we can burn out, and it doesn't always translate into work. And then following that episode, we did one about your work doesn't own you and how to prioritize yourself. So those were two really, really, really important episodes that I thought were super important for us and others in the middle of our cast.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to start, like, we've talked to some amazing people on this podcast. Some of them are personal friends or professional acquaintances of ours that we've brought on for their expertise. But I think we kind of hit the jackpot when back in 2021, when we were approached by the campaign team for Jody Gondek, who was running for mayor at the time. And her campaign approached us. And this is still 2021. So, I mean, we were pretty not a known entity as a podcast in Calgary, but I guess enough to pique the interest of a campaign. So yeah, we, in June of 2021, we had an interview with Jody Gondek, who now is the mayor of Calgary. She wasn't at the time. She was campaigning, but that's episode 33, back in June of 2021. And I believe Dakota and I also cried in that episode because it was, I believe, an early morning, because during campaign, like, so we had to record it early in the morning from what I remember. And Dakota and I showed up like we normally do, in hoodies and greasy hair. And Jody comes onto the Zoom screen and she's in this beautiful pink, like, tunic sari type thing of her Indian heritage and looking just amazing. And we just were like, oh God, we are not in her league at all. And it was so embarrassing. I think it was a lesson for us though, too, that like, if we're having someone like that stature.
No, she loved us for who we were though. She
did. But I have to say, and it's funny, she still remembers us. She still remembers that episode. And I know I've run into her campaign manager a few times since. And Joe has mentioned that that was one of her favorite interviews that she got to do during the campaign, because we talked about everything non-politics. We talked about community services. We talked about her favorite candy store. We talked about her favorite books. We talked about being a woman in academia and her work as a scholar and all of those sorts of things. And she was just the most lovely individual, and she almost took care of us more than we did of her in that episode. But it was sort of our first foray into having to do sort of an interview with someone of a stature, and knowing that she's now the mayor is a bit of a feather in our cap, that we got to talk to the mayor before she was the mayor.
Pretty amazing. And I feel like another thing I'm super proud of in terms of everything we've done is we've also had numerous outstanding female leaders on this podcast. And I'm proud to say that 70% of them are our people, our community, our friends. So, we've had Carla Link, who is the leader of communications over at the YW Calgary, and my former boss, come on and talk about how females let us out of the pandemic. and what that kind of looked like during the pandemic and what women in particular were going through during the pandemic. We've had branding experts on the podcast. We've had financial experts on the podcast. We've had other really impressive pals that Alyssa's brought on to talk about government as well, and government relations, and everything from taking care of yourself and your business to what does your brand identity look like. So there's a lot of really great content in here if you are looking for information pertaining to being inspired as a female business owner.
Yeah, I mean, it is a testament to the amazing people we have in our world as our people that we've been able to bring them onto this podcast. I think the episode with Zaina talking about getting a divorce in Alberta it resonated with a lot of people, and making divorce easy, and that you don't have to go through lawyers and all this nonsense, and like empowering women to leave bad relationships. And I think there were some very powerful conversations that we had. I talked to my friend Kim Glucky just recently, episode 92, that's from September, when she talked about being like getting a divorce and having a stroke and having to sort of rebuild your life at 50 and what that looks like. And I think you don't have to be the same age or be in the same industry as a lot of these amazing women to understand their story. And I think I know one of our friends sent me a screenshot of the place that she was, of the timestamp of that episode that she was listening to with Kim. And she's like, oh my God, this at this time resonated with me. And I am like crying and taken aback by this level of insight. And it was amazing. It's like, yeah, you're out for a walk or whatever, and that moment hits you so much that you have to take a screenshot. So, you know, the exact time of the podcast that there was that moment that you had a aha moment or whatever. Like that's what we strive to do here, is give people those moments of realization or those moments of vulnerability. And it doesn't matter where you're listening to us, that you feel that you're a part of our village too. And that we want to give you the same gut feelings and responses that we get when we talk to people.
Absolutely. And I think the podcast is only going to get more real. I personally want to get a little more controversial. I want to get a little bitchier, you know, in the future. I want to call things out. I want to talk about the crap. I want to talk about the good things, of course, too. But I really want to use this as a platform to give other women a voice and to give us a voice. And I think Alyssa and I can both attest to, we've had a wild, great ride running our businesses, but we've also learned some really cool stuff along the way. And we've also seen through a lot of bullshit. So we're going to harness that and deliver it to you guys in a way that's helpful.
Yeah. And if you listen to our last episode where we talk about the sort of reintroducing Ladies Who Launch and some of our plans, that is what you're going to start seeing, is us becoming us. We've grown into ourselves and to the podcast over these last years. And I think we feel that the audience that we've built and the reputation that we've been able to build and the brand allows us more flexibility and freedom to become more direct. I mean, we are those people anyway, and I think that comes across in the podcast no matter what we're talking about. But yeah, like it's time to start calling crap out and start calling out societal issues and all of that sort of thing. I mean, we've made reference to a lot of things in different podcasts, but it's like, I'd love to have an entire episode on being anti-capitalist and why late stage capitalism is ruining society and all those sorts of things. I mean, we want to do a podcast on how to create your workflow around your menstrual cycle and what that looks like, because working for women throughout your cycle is very different, depending on where you are in your cycle. And I think those are some things like talking about period poverty and all those sorts of things that matter as women or female presenting people, that we need to talk about those kind of things. And I think a lot of the things that have happened over the 4 years, I mean, we've lost people personally, whether it's sickness and death and things like that. Like just before we started this podcast, I lost one of my oldest friends to cancer. So it'll be 4 years in March. And I found out other friends have had cancer or had losses. And it's being able to take all those things that have happened over a period that everybody goes through in their lives and talk about them. Like, I don't think we do a good enough job as society about talking about those hard things. So if we can be the voice of those hard conversations, then I think that's a win for us.
And when I think about all my personal heroes that I listen to every single week via podcast, that's exactly what I access those podcasts for, is when I need something. When I need relationship advice, I look to Mark Groves and this gentleman out of the UK named Matthew Hussey, who I think is brilliant personally. I also listen to this gal out of the States called Date Yourself Instead. She's friggin' amazing. And then when I need business stuff, like I love Mel Robbins for a good pick me up. And so we're kind of trying to amalgamate our heroes and kind of use them as inspiration for what we do as well. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. And like another episode that I really loved doing was body positivity with Body by Chai. So we have this really incredible business owner here in Calgary who basically helps women find their actual correct fit when it comes to underwear and intimates. And she not only does this for women, she does it for everybody. And so that was a really cool episode that, anybody who identifies as women deserves amazing lingerie and to feel good about going and getting it because it's something we wear every day. So how can you get stuff that actually makes you feel empowered? You should feel empowered from the inside out. And that includes the layers of clothing in between your skin and your outside clothes. So I really love that as well.
Yeah, Chai is amazing. And her entire business model, I mean, being a safe space for queer people, especially now in this time in Alberta, like whatever, is important.
Whole episode.
That's a whole episode.
God.
The dumpster that is Alberta. But we have amazing, I think maybe as a way to sort of close off this episode is we have amazing people, not just in our city of Calgary, but everywhere. And there's amazing people in your community, wherever you live, and being able to showcase those people and allow them to share their stories and share their expertise is super uplifting. And I think that's part of the plan that we have moving forward, is to continue to showcase amazing people in our community and outside our community. They're doing great things, and how what they're doing can benefit you in whatever capacity. And also for us, with each other, it's having those more difficult conversations, being able to talk about things and be vocal about issues that matter to us and have a voice on those things. Because not only are we people of the world and we live here as people, but we've had very interesting lives that I think we can bring a lot of insight into specific topics that maybe others can't. So expect more badass conversations and calling things out that we do in our daily lives, but maybe we need to do more of on the podcast. But as we wrap, I think, Dakota, and I just want to say thank you, as we said at the beginning, for allowing us into your lives, because you have to listen to us and bring us on your dog walks or on your days of working at your desk or whatever it is that you're doing. But we encourage you to look back through our 100 episodes, and especially if you've just come on recently as a listener or have sort of jumped in and out, really go back and look at some of the topics and some of the people we've had, because you'll probably learn a lot, and you'll probably find either people or topics or things that you want to learn more about, even outside of what we've talked about. So yeah, it's an amazing treasure trove of content. So yeah, on a day that you need something to listen to, just pull up an episode from 2020 or 2021 and see what we were talking about back then. Because honestly, we've also grown as hosts and people in that 4 years too. We sound and talk a lot differently than we did at the beginning too.
Absolutely. I think that you only get better with time and practice. Really, it's that 10,000 hour rule, right, Alyssa?
Yeah.
But we're excited to bring you a new era of Ladies Who Launch. Moving forward, we're going to be really honing in and focusing on conversations between Alyssa and I. Then we're going to be sprinkling in some pretty fantastic guests, probably about once a month. So we look forward to rolling that out with you guys, starting with our next episode 101. And with that, please don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast. Leave us a review. Again, it's the number one way to help us get into the top of the charts, and we would really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, and we will catch you on the next episode of Ladies Who Launch.
Thank you for listening to Ladies Who Launch. Join Dakota and Alyssa every second Wednesday for more conversations and interesting guests. Be sure to give us a 5-star rating and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. If you send us a question, we may answer it on a future episode.